If we can kick off, maybe I'll just go in order of how I see you on the screen. So no preference other than that. And top left is Karl. So Karl, why don't you just introduce yourself briefly, and then I'll work down the list.
Thank you, Damian. Cheers. Hello, everyone. So I'm Karl Woolley. I work at Framestore. I've been at Framestore for 15 years now, and as a business, we've been around for 34 years. Traditionally, working in the visual effects space for feature films and TV, and for the last 10 years, really, we've been looking at what was digital, classified as digital, so anything non-traditional for visual effects, such as interactive websites, real-time animation, and then onto VR and AR. And that division's grown substantially, and I'm responsible for real-time technologies for non-film purposes. Yeah, that's me.
Very good. Thanks, Karl. Welcome. Joanna is next in my list of tiles.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joanna Popper. It's great to see you all, and great to be here with this great cast of panelists, especially Chewbacca, one of my heroes since I was a child. And I work at HP. I'm on the virtual reality team. I focus on our go-to-market, and was originally joined HP to focus on our location-based entertainment. We've been recently launching a new headset, the HP Reverb Generation 2. Just started shipping it in the last few weeks. We're super excited about it. It's a partnership with Valve and Microsoft, and have another new headset coming next year, the HP Reverb Generation 2 Omnicept Edition, which adds on biometric sensors. So lots of exciting stuff happening on our side, and happy to be here and answer some questions.
Thank you, Joanna. And we'll do questions at the end, but feel free to post them in the chat, and we'll try and get through as many as we can. Catherine.
Hi, good morning from LA. My name is Catherine D. Henry. I am an XR strategist and global account manager and head of Palpable Media. I started off as an emerging tech specialist in investment banking. So I've been doing that for 15 years. And then I decided that I really wanted to focus all in on VR and AR because I'm very passionate about the space. And I see a huge upside potential for growth. But actually talking to a lot of prospective clients and even agencies, I realized that we really need to scale, to sort of scale back, but also go wider. So because I'm, accustomed to working with a lot of different technologies, we've expanded it to a full spectrum emerging technology agency that includes advisory to enterprise and entertainment on everything from AI, AR, chatbots, digital doubles, so that we can help companies innovate. Our focus is primarily on enterprise and entertainment, and because we've changed, experiential has changed very dramatically over the last year. It's also changed the landscape of the type of business that we're offering, so that our focus right now has been primarily on innovation and how to help people work and collaborate and communicate at a distance. And so that's the greatest challenge, is what that innovation looks like.
Thank you. Jeremy.
Hi everyone, my name is Jeremy Dalton, and I started the virtual reality and augmented reality team at PwC in the UK. And we're all about helping organizations to really gain business benefit from virtual reality and augmented reality. So we speak to companies across all different industries and different application areas. As long as VR and AR has value, then we're happy to talk about it ultimately.
Very good, thanks. So I thought we'd kick off with just taking a look back. When I started Ben 5 years ago, you had to put a Samsung Gear into a plastic white headset, and you had to work out how to fold your Google Cardboard so that it actually all fit together properly. And obviously things have come a long way since then. And what made me start was I saw the first 360 video posted by Mark Zuckerberg, which was sort of the blue arrows on Facebook flying in formation. And that, for me, was how I got started. Joanna, how did you get started in immersive, and what was your first project?
Well, the first time I ever tried virtual reality was 2014. I was working at NBC Universal, and we had an agency meeting where they put us in think a DK1 at the time, and a Google Glass. And so in the VR headset, I experienced a roller coaster. That was my first VR experience. So I was still working at NBC Universal. I then went on to work at a tech company in Silicon Valley. And while I was at that company, I was exposed to a lot of VR and started doing projects and working with different partners in the space, and realized really quickly that VR was a combination of the two, sort of my two passions at the time, which were the content side, the storytelling, the creativity, imagination of the media world, plus the innovation, constantly looking at what next. VR. So I working in this.
So that roller coaster.
Down, inside out, and so that first one definitely wasn't the most dangerous I've been on since.
And with location based, I mean, obviously we're sitting here in the middle of a pandemic. How have you? We're going off on a tangent from my question list, but just since you raised it, how has that been impacted for you? When you introduce yourself, you said you started in location based. Is there a sort of a move away from location based VR because of a concern about the pandemic, or is that still very much?
No, I mean, I expanded my role, but last summer, so it was certainly before COVID, so expanded to take on our general go-to-market area last year. As far as location based, we're still working very, very, very closely with a lot of our partners around the world. What's happening, it's certainly a global pandemic, but it's also very different in different countries, depending on governments and regulations and lots of different things. So, much of Asia has been reopened for quite a while. And so, our partners there are humming along. And then Europe did have, what was doing quite well through part of the summer and fall, and only recently has started to have to shut down again. So what we have seen, and what I would say is the good news that we've seen out of location based, is that once places do reopen, they have really strong numbers. So it seems like there's a pent up interest and pent up demand for the places that are able to be open, in a safe way. We've seen that the companies have really shifted operations, how they address and market the hygienes, in some cases even the content, to make sure that even in content you're far away from people. But what I would say is, so the two sort of positive factors we've seen is the numbers are strong when places are reopened and open. And also, if you think about location-based entertainment VR compared to, say, a cinema or a concert or a theme park or many other things that you might do, in a way, VR brings a natural social distancing because of the throughput with technology. So so right now you're going to be in a small group. You're going to be in a group of 4 or 6 or 8, and often only a group that you came with, compared to, say, a concert or a cinema or, another venue where you might have hundreds or thousands of people together. So there is some sort of natural social distancing that comes with VR that I think will play to VR's advantage and location-based entertainment VR in the future.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm a partner in the War of the Worlds immersive experience in London that is combines VR and other kind of immersive theatre, and in many ways, as I understand it, the guys who produce that are finding it a lot easier to reopen, which they're doing in March, because they are these smaller groups. The one big challenge is the free roam VR section, where you would otherwise have people in headsets roaming around a room. And obviously, how do you avoid people kind of bumping into each other when they're supposed to be?
Yeah, some of the players we're working with are changing the content so that, for example, creating a scene where part of the game is like not touching somebody else, or part of the game is staying away from other people, or not getting too close to them. So we are seeing, or even in a previous version, maybe you got into an elevator with other people and all went upstairs virtually, but now they're making sure everyone goes in the elevator by themselves, so they don't have that stranger danger in an elevator in VR moment. So we're seeing people adapt the content in that way for the current situation.
Makes sense. And Karl, what was your first? Because we worked on a project together about 4 years ago for out of your New York office.
We did. That actually came up again the other day, that project. I mean, I was just going to add something to what Joanna, in a positive way, of course. I was just going to add something to what Joanna was saying around, managing VR in LBEs. The elephant in the room has always been, and I'm sure Jeremy will have seen this too, and Catherine, is a throughput issue compared to traditional location-based experiences. So this really kind of helps to manage and refine some of those processes, and also who knows how advanced the testing will become, so that as part of does it just become a part of normal life that we have these, lateral flow tests? I don't really know what they are. I just hear Boris talk about one a lot, right? But does that enable things like this to become, have less friction? Because I totally agree with what Joe is saying. It lends itself quite well, although on the face of it, it feels like it doesn't, because you have equipment in close proximity, but there are lots of benefits that you can employ, that you could utilize. But to answer your question, Jen, so the first, and I was just checking my emails then whilst Joe was talking, so I wasn't off working. I just wanted to check the dates. So it was 2012 into 2013 was when we did our first sort of VR project testing with some equipment, is what I can say. And when we launched the LA office, we too had a party, and as Joanna described, the roller coaster experience was the one that we set up with a chair in the middle of this big empty concrete space, a projector wall, and we put people through it, and we recorded little picture-in-picture videos for them to record and take away. And it was immediately obvious that there was incredible value for entertainment. And so then the following year at South by Southwest, we launched our first VR project, which kicked off the studio and transformed Framestore Digital to Framestore Immersive, really, which was for Game of Thrones. We had almost the perfect storm of South by Southwest, one of the biggest IPs and franchises and studios we could work with, and the current technology trend at that festival. And we went from 3 or 4 people between London and New York to now, I don't know what the total headcount is, but Immersive and VR has sort of been really the spearhead for how we look at other ways of producing pixels at Framestore beyond just immersive, access and exposure to real-time engines across the board, and the whole industry has this has been the trailblazer, really. Think how much virtual production there is going on now. We're remotely working on shows where we have directors in one location and the crew in another location, a virtual set, and remotely in VR scouting and placing cameras and rehearsing. So it's real. It's not hype or tech demos anymore. If you want to use it, the platforms and the technologies such as that are out there, they're available. It's a big change. No more roller coaster demos. Well, you can go on a real roller coaster with a headset if you want. We've done one of those as well. So yeah, the roller coaster demos have ramped up a little bit. Opportunities are sizable right now compared to 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, and we see it across not just VR, but AR and mixed reality and 3D. Just the full breadth from medical training for nurses all the way through to AR filters for music artists. You were seeing the sort of the full gamut today. Catherine, what are you working on that's exciting you at the moment?
Well, I mean, just to pick up on the thread of virtual, or rather immersive experiences. Now, we saw the collapse of the void last week it was announced that Disney was unloading it. And it was funny because I would say at the beginning of the pandemic, I'd had lunch with the CEO of a major network, and he said, wait, VR, isn't that dead? And he was referring to all these location-based things. I'd done a series of location-based experiences on video for VR Room, which is an industry magazine, vrroom.buzz, and you can see a lot of those things up there. What's interesting is I see that there's going to be an inversion of what we're doing. So I also work with Periscape Vr. It's based here in LA, and they have they've put towers up. Basically, you can imagine a square metal rectangular box, and it sits in the middle of the floor in an airport, and you can just put on the headsets, and this can be transported anywhere, into a mall, into a store. And so I think that plus Cleanbox makes it really something that can be transported all over the place, but on a smaller scale. To your point, I've seen smaller scale places here in LA, Area 15, which is much larger. They're delaying their opening, but I expect that that's going to be really big. But equally, we're seeing places like, and I did a video there, the Palais, I want to call it des Illuminations, Atelier Lumière or something in Paris, excuse me, it's early. But they have a space like Team Lab in Amsterdam, where it's basically an art space. So even art spaces like Art Tech House and others, they're getting, sort of merging over the sort of cultural space. And I think that museums, cultural institutions, and as well as a lot of branded franchises have to think about how to bring that entertainment into people's homes. So before you have this place where people can physically meet, and I think they will come back, but the awareness has really sort of lit people up thinking we have to create either a virtual space where people can meet, whether it's Engage or Verbella or VR Chat or wherever, or we have to create a virtual experience where we can transport people to our worlds when those worlds are not accessible. And Tribeca Film Festival famously mentioned that they had something like 4 times the number of attendees to its virtual VR festival than to its physical festival every year because they put it in VR headset. So I think we're in that transition phase where people are thinking, how can we innovate, expand our offering, and actually, potentially raise our revenues? And I think that that's a really interesting inflection point. Are we there yet? No. I feel that a lot of companies are still trying to figure out what innovation looks like, what form it should take. They're looking at their existing resources and they're trying to balance that out. So we're not quite at the tipping point, but I think that it's going to get interesting over the next few months.
And you work a lot, Catherine, in the enterprise space. Do you find that the ROI question is still the sort of the first one that businesses are asking?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, what I do is I do a lot of pitches to pitch, which is really frustrating if I'm honest. So I work with other consultancies that don't have the internal capabilities, but they have the relationships that we as a small agency do not. Therefore, it makes a lot of sense for me as an expert in the space to say, listen, these are your options. This is what certain people have done. This is what they've done well and what they haven't, and here's the upside. I can tell you, I spoke with an agency recently, and it was just astonishing on so many levels. They proposed, as one of their deck was really thick about all sorts of statistics, none of which were related to the industry in question. And then the specific things were so far like sci-fi that I was thinking, how do you even get business? So it's really hard to bring down that, imagine this woman, she gets pulled, an autonomous vehicle pulls up to her house with a nutritional breakfast inside that she can read with a retina eye display. I kid you not, because it's smart of it. And then she goes to buy a lipstick that's got, because she's working from home, it has insect repellent. Now, none of this makes sense, especially in the next 2 years. What can we do to help companies improve their bottom line? We already know that augmented reality on the factory floors is being employed everywhere. That's not new. So what is new and how can we add value? And that's the question I always have to ask myself. What aren't people aware of and how can we take them further? I think the low-hanging fruit is really in training. VR training is a big, big deal right now. And there are a number of outstanding providers. And so that's one of the things that I mostly talk about. And the other thing is, surprisingly, that many companies, especially in AEC, which is architecture, engineering, and construction, they are looking to establish virtual headquarters. So it's very exciting that we have the platforms, and those platforms are getting more sophisticated by the day. They're over 100, by the way. So a lot of them will flock to one and then find out it's really not going to work for them. So, but it is a significant investment because you have to physically build it. But, online conferencing is huge. But again, I think a lot of people have to get around the initial shock of seeing themselves or an avatar form, because once you're in the headset, it's a totally different thing. And so those are the areas that I see as training, online virtual spaces, meeting spaces, and then finally, conferencing and events in real VR, a real virtual meeting as opposed to Zooms.
Yeah, no, we see that. We see a demand for that quite a lot these days, especially with the pandemic. And avatars are a bit of a barrier because people aren't used to them. And once you put your headset on, then you expect to have a real life experience, but you're not getting that. But they're getting better. I think Wolf 3D and HoloMe and other platforms are advancing that. And Jeremy, you're constantly putting out great reports, really informative reports about the benefits of training and learning and development. What are you seeing right now? What are you working on that's particularly interesting or exciting for you?
So right now, we've just finished creating an experience around increasing awareness on diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And it's built in virtual reality, but there'll be a desktop equivalent available as well to help it scale. It was built using a combination of volumetric video for the individuals in the narrative, combined with a computer-generated background, all brought together in Unity. So that was really quite technologically challenging because it had to be delivered on an Oculus Quest or standalone headsets, more accurately. And they're basically at the level of where they have a mobile phone processor pre-Quest 2, of course. So we had to build to the spec of the Quest 1 and make sure that it was as engaging, immersive, believable as possible, but while retaining the ability to run really smoothly on standalone headsets. So that's been really exciting, and we're starting to push that out internally. And it's a long way from where we were a few years ago. I remember using 360 video on a Gear VR, which you mentioned earlier, Damian. And we delivered that exercise, and this was about putting yourself in the shoes of your coachees in PwC. It was an internal initiative. And we delivered that to 2,800 people over the course of 3 days using Gear VRs and Samsung Note 4s or whatever it was at the time. That was an insanely difficult logistical exercise, which required a hell of a lot of headset buffer numbers. So, I think we had 200 headsets, but we brought 250, and I think we maxed out on 250 because mobile phones were overheating, some were dying in the middle, some were crashing, all sorts of issues. But thankfully, things have become far more reliable these days.
I wonder how many times you had to take the phone out of the headset and put it back in to reconnect. That was a really big issue.
It's the 2010s equivalent of getting out the game cartridge and blowing into it before putting it back in, right?
It was such a problem, and trying to see what people were seeing on the Gear VR and ask people, can you see the plot? And it was very, very difficult back then. And in terms of creators, because we've got quite a lot of creators and developers who have joined as attendees for this discussion, and obviously our role in Life Blend is connecting a global community of creators with brands and clients through our online marketplace. How are you finding freelancers? How are you finding developers, creators, and do you have any advice for them, Karl?
I mean, I don't think you could have been doing what you're doing at a better time. If there was ever a good thing to come out of a dreadful situation, it's the attitude to remote working has drastically changed. Like, I mean, like my colleagues at Framestore will know every single book on that shelf, and they will see that the wine collection that used to sit behind me dwindled after about 5 days. But you know, it would have been inconceivable for us to work with remote freelancers all over the world on the kinds of projects which we work on, which vary in level of security due to, you know, IP and such, compared to now, where, you know, back in March our hand was forced, so we've adapted our systems and our approach. So in some ways, you know, the situation's improved because the attitude has changed, you know, and clients and production companies are more open to working, you know, in this way. The difficulty is in finding enough people now because of the uptake in these technologies and the skill sets required. You know, AR is absolutely everywhere. You know, VR is growing stronger in the enterprise space. Obviously, location based is on, I see it on a bit of a pause, but the skills remain the same. You know, core skills in game engines and understanding how to build and design for 3D space. That's the key thing, really. And you know, we are going through quite a big hiring push at the moment. We're building an interesting division focused on this area of work and how we leverage game engines. And finding people is difficult. You're challenged for good people all the time because everybody wants these people, and there are no experts really, because it's still pretty nascent, this industry, you know, foregoing, you know, the technology from the 70s and the 80s. So there's no ready-made, you know, you don't go out and hire, you know, an experienced virtual production supervisor of 5 to 6 years, because the truth is really the tools have only been built over the last 2 to 3 years. So it's, you know, having a way to access talent and pull them together in the team is, you know, it's a challenge. So it's obviously services like Blend, depending on the project type, will be a great fit, especially for, I guess, the kind of clients that Jeremy and Catherine tend to work with, where maybe they don't want to invest in a big production team or production company, and they want to test something out, and they've got a budget and they can post a brief and they can just say, well, I'm willing to spend $10,000 on this or $50,000. I don't know what it costs. Someone tell me what it costs. Then an open marketplace, which was in, you know, previously not controlled, but, you know, limited to certain types of production companies, which might have made it difficult for certain industries to pick up VR. Access to credible freelance talent is obviously going to help that uptake generally. And I don't know, Jeremy, Catherine, if you've seen that with some of your clients, because, you know, the limited partners who could probably produce some of this content 5 years ago, where I guess what I'm trying to say is now there are a lot more.
Well, I guess
I can't find them all, but maybe they exist on the marketplace.
They're on Blend. Go to market.blend. They're all there. Catherine.
You know, I had a group called the XR Creatives, and I started off in New York City, and I did it because they were a lot of meetups that were all about, that were app focused as opposed to the creative side of technology. In fact, our first name was New York City Tech Creatives. It was a name that was not very creative itself, but anyway, the idea was to bring together a lot of people who were really pushing the envelope in creativity. So we explored all of the tech innovations and different sort of AI and art and different exhibits in New York, and people showing their work. It was very exciting, really cutting edge stuff, I have to say. And then during the pandemic, I decided to make this XR Creative, so it's national, and we've got members from all around the world. It's almost 3,000 people. And I also opened up an XR Jobs Slack, because I realized even when I was in New York, some really, really talented people were struggling to find consistent work. And those are the developers. And I know that there's a big demand, but I was really surprised when I was in an elevator after one of our meetups. This guy said, you know, he just came back from Japan. One of the most talented guys, he's like, yeah, you know, but finding work is always such a struggle. So there is a disconnect. And we did an AR art walk. And during this, we got some devs, but then a couple of other people volunteered, and I thought, well, maybe we should ask them, politely, that let them know that this is only a dev meetup. But the person who was doing it with me said, no, I think everybody, if they're interested, they should be able to participate. So we let them do it. And I have to tell you, they were so instrumental. One had UI UX background, was constantly sort of updating the team, was driving things forward, was clarifying our goals and how to get there. And I felt that this is really illustrative of the fact that there are a lot of people who are who aren't devs, people who are strategists, people who are marketers, who have been in this space for a couple of years. They maybe haven't gotten loads of work, but they have more exposure than many who are already sitting in offices and getting tasked to do things that they don't understand. So what I'm saying is that we have a lot of people who are looking for work, and in our XR Creatives meetup, people are always keen to hear more about it. The question is, how do I derive? So we've got a lot of open calls and other things, the occasional job, but how can I really put this marketplace together? And maybe this is where, Damian, you and I have to work together, because I want to make sure that people have access more, to more jobs where they can work all around the world, from wherever they are.
Yeah, well, obviously that's our priority. We want to connect all parts of the ecosystem, and that's why we built Blend Market. We see everything from, even in the last few days, probably 6 or 7 project briefs, from a quill artist to a 3D modeler to a Unity developer. Training, entertainment is really broad, and I guess one of the questions is, how do you surface the most skilled creators to the top? How do you find those creators who are reliable?
That's one of the things that I do all the time. So I just started a news video blog called XRE News. So weekly I published my thoughts on that. Before that, I had a show in Altspace called where we would visit. It's called Spatial Land, where we would visit all the different worlds in VR and what was happening in VR. So what I've done for the past 5 years is really stay on top of, and I met you in London during a trip when I was just doing my recon to see who are the best VR content producers in the UK, and that's how we initially met. So that's how I've always done that. I've traveled to Europe quite frequently, VR days in Amsterdam every year. So I'm on the ground meeting people, seeing their work. This afternoon I'm going to go to an AR studio, Rising Star AR, where they're capturing images for commercial use, and it's really cool to see what they're doing. So not only does that help me understand, to be able to pitch better, because I know what people are offering, because that informs everything. Just to look at somebody else, and this is just general advice, it's just, I've had clients who just refer to something that they saw in a magazine 6 months ago, and you're thinking, A, it doesn't apply to you, B, there are 25 other super exciting things you can do tomorrow, and I know the best people out there, and that's what you want. You want somebody who's done it before. So it's part of what I offer as a strategist. I am not myself a developer. I have made VR films before. I went to New York Film Academy to learn VR, but what I do is, it's all about, for me, how do you add value, and that's really through your Rolodex, having access to talent. And if you are a team already, like you said, if it's an agency, you need to have something like Blend Media or some sort of resource if you haven't got those connections.
Yeah. And Joanna, how do you stay up to date with kind of who's the current hot developer, and do you use a lot of freelance developers, or is it all in-house at HP?
Well, we don't have a lot of developers. We have most of what we do is in-house. But we're providing the technology to then work with the content creators. We do now have a software team for which does have a team of developers, but for our HP Reverb G2 Omnicept edition. But mainly we're providing the technology that allows the developers to go out and create their creations. So how do we stay up to date? Well, we work with many of the people in the field, and have been for quite a few years, whether it was with the
Joanna knows everybody.
Yeah.
And
Everybody knows Joanna.
I think
it certainly in some ways was easier before, where we were physically I was spending at least 50% of my time traveling all around the world, and you know, at the different tech conferences or the film festivals, or together with partners and clients. But now we're still doing all of that. We're just doing it on Zoom. So, but we're pretty lucky to be in a spot where, because of the products we make and because of the technology we're bringing forth, you know, we have the opportunity to talk to lots of people, not just on the content creation side, but as well as on the technical side, all the companies that are creating new things that are pushing the industry forward, and we're also partnering with many of them. So, you know, obviously we're working really closely with Valve, really closely with Microsoft, with Toby, with quite a few others we work very closely with NVIDIA and AMD and Intel and many of the companies.
And Jeremy, are you building a team in-house, or are you still making use of some freelancers and developers and independent creators?
It's a bit of a hybrid model. So we do have some in-house developers based in different parts of the world. So we've got some in the UK, some in the US, Belgium, Poland, Middle East, and so on. But I would say we also work with external contractors as well, and freelancers. And in fact, we had, if I recall correctly, about 5 freelancers on this last project that I mentioned, the diversity and inclusion project. And those roles were in the realm of a texture artist, a lighting optimization specialist in Unity, a script writer, a concept artist, and audio designer. So those are roles that I wouldn't hire for permanently in PwC because there's not enough of a pipeline for us to keep them busy in a full-time fashion. So it makes absolute sense for us to be able to supplement our team as and when required with freelancers from the market. So I think it's incredibly important to have that.
And for those particular skills, how did you find those particular freelancers, those 5 that you mentioned?
I think mainly through my network, but I also made use of the blend market for 1 or 2 of them.
That wasn't the lead question, by the way. I was genuinely curious.
Q has been ticked. We're all good.
Don't worry, I'll mention your book in a minute.
Yeah, no, but in seriousness, we have used the blend market before, and that's been successful. But I also use my network on LinkedIn, as well as you build a history, right? So as you go through more and more projects, you start to see which freelancers have delivered really good work for you, and they become part of your Rolodex, I suppose, for future projects. And you refer to them first, and if they're not available, then you go to the market. So I think you can build that through doing lots and lots of these projects, having lots of experiences with different freelancers.
Yeah. And with the diversity project you mentioned, what made you build that in-house rather than use a Tailspin or a Body Swaps or some other similar platform that already has pre-existing modules, as it were, that you could just then take on?
It was primarily a desire to tell the story of our people. So we've got about 25,000 people in PwC UK, nearly 275,000 worldwide, and they come from all different communities, ethnicities, backgrounds, ages, genders. So there's a diverse picture and story there, which we wanted to bring to life. So we actually have a network at PwC, the Multicultural Business Network. So they were heavily involved in this project in terms of telling us their stories, their real life stories of how they've experienced, everything from microaggressions to other negative interactions in the workplace and outside of the workplace. And we wanted to do their stories justice. And the only way to do that is by creating something from scratch with their consultancy right from the beginning, rather than something that is off the shelf that we would try and shoehorn into telling their messages.
And is that a project that you're keeping internal, or will you roll it out to other clients, or make it available as a case study to win business to do the same thing for other clients?
I think it's initially going to be an internal tool. That was always the remit when we were thinking about building this. Throughout the build process, it's become apparent that a lot of clients are interested in these stories, because they are shared not only within PwC but across different industries as well. So it's certainly an option for us, and it's something we'll probably explore over the next 6 months.
And in terms of immersive, Karl, what's coming next year that most excites you? AR glasses, what's the one thing that you've been hearing on the grapevine?
Do you think they're coming next year?
Well, no, I'm asking you.
Do you know something?
No, I don't know anything. What are you hearing on the grapevine that is coming either in the next year or two? That, because obviously at Framestore you're having these conversations both with hardware and clients. What's coming down the line that you think 2021 is going to hold?
That's a good question. I think the focus over the last 5 to 6 years has been around hardware. And we've all touched on it. Google Cardboard, then Gear VR, then higher resolution, then wireless. Like, they're all barriers, really. Like, being truthful and not to be a hype beast about the whole. Really, there's a lot of barriers to entry. Facebook and Oculus are getting closer with the price point. Things like Catherine was mentioning about easy pop-up solutions so people can go and experience the content. These things are getting better. But really, for me, I think the exciting thing for 21, which might sound strange, is the normalizing of the technology. So it doesn't feel like a gimmick. It doesn't feel like, oh, wow, look at this VR. Oh, like it doesn't feel like what you're being presented is a gimmicky roller coaster, right? My son's just started secondary school, and he's been kind of spoiled with access to technology since he was much younger. His friends at school have got VR headsets. His friend had a birthday last week. He got a Quest, and you can hear them like they're going to come through the ceiling in the next 5 minutes because they're playing Beat Saber together or whatever it is they're doing. It's the norm. It's these things which feel like future trends becoming normal. Like, and the point of reference that I use is that scene in Minority Report. That's still never happened because people don't actually need it. This technology adds something, right? It adds a richness to experience, a level of immersion, and that word gets overused, but really, I think anyone that's tried it understands.
Yeah.
And that, for me, I know that's a wishy-washy answer because I can't actually tell you some of what I know and what I think I know, but what I can tell you is what I'm excited about is that, the technology genuinely becoming mainstream. I think there is, sometimes it's easy, especially as a visual effects company, to look at the quality of the work that gets done and be judged and be, slightly judge projects based on the quality, when really what you need to be looking at is the amount of stuff that's out there, because it shows you that there is a demand, right? Advertisers wouldn't be spending the money if they didn't think there was an opportunity in the market. Oculus, HP, like VR being dead. Well, I don't see that at all, to be honest. Like, there is growth. You can buy the Quest 2 for periods of time. So look, I think yes, it actually going mainstream to the point where it becomes, it's not a gimmick, it becomes normal, because then people start to think, right, what else can I do? What else can I be doing? Could I use this in work? Could I use this for training? Rather than, people like all of us on this call having to say, oh, you could do this, you could do that, you could do this. You don't have to do that for traditional mediums because they're normal. People just get them, and that's the point I think we're starting to get to. So yeah, the broadening of the market and establishing that user base will help all of us, creators, OEMs, production companies, IPs. I don't know if it's going to fully hit home next year, But you all know that as soon as a certain company releases any piece of hardware, it goes mainstream within minutes. So that doesn't mean that what the folks have at HTC and Valve and Microsoft and Oculus have done before isn't great. But as soon as, you know, certain company releases a product, it's like the industry was reborn at that point. You know, mobile computing, smartphones, when Apple finally release whatever they've got up their sleeve, that will be the tipping point, not because the technology is any better or worse, but because, you know, people will have faith, that the audience will have a trust. You know?
The loyalty, yeah, the brand loyalty, of course.
Absolutely, yeah.
Anna, what do you think? What's coming next year in from your perspective?
Well, we're really excited about some of the things that we're up to. I've mentioned the HP Reverb G2, which started shipping and will continuing to ship next year. What we're excited about with that headset is that it brings incredibly high resolution, so very, very immersive experience, great audio. You know, really easy to set up, and, you know, at a reasonable price. So that's for those who still want to continue with a tethered PC VR experience because, you know, they're playing games where being tethered makes a lot more sense, or because their workflows and pipelines need that extra kick. They need to be connected to the GPU. They want that super high resolution. And then next year in the spring we'll be launching the HP Reverb Generation 2 Omnicept Edition, which is something really new and different. It brings biometrics into play. It will have eye tracking plus pupillometry plus face camera plus heart rate sensor. So it brings all of, you know, a lot of that has been done, but all in different headsets. So it brings it all together into one headset. And then, so we have the hardware side, then there's the software side. So at launch, we'll be launching with a SDK for cognitive load. So at launch, it's very targeted towards enterprise and developers, and particularly those that are focused on training, learning, and development, and education. And then there are also quite a few partners that are working and creating their applications that will be built on top of it. And so what we see with that is that, you know, for example, a flight simulation, you know, an aviation pilot in training, this new headset will allow their instructor to customize the learning for them and to see, you know, are they afraid? Are they excited? Are they bored? Are they paying attention? You know, okay, they're bored. Let's ratchet it up. Let's bring on a more challenging situation. So it really changes and customizes the way that the training can be done. You know, we already know from lots of the work that people on this panel, some of the great work that PwC has done, and the reports that they've put out on the statistics for retention and virtual reality and how effective training in virtual reality is. And now this new headset, the HP Reverb G2 Omnicept Edition, takes it to that next level with that degree of customization and having that, not just the training comes at you, but information from you goes back to the trainer to then improve upon and customize your overall experience, so that retention and that you know, it becomes even higher in VR, and VR becomes an even better tool for training and learning and development.
Exciting. We've had a question from anonymous attendee. Thank you for your question, anonymous. The question is the HP G2 targeted at enterprise users primarily?
No. So the HP Reverb G2 is actually targeted at consumers as well as businesses. So for the G2, the base headset that has started shipping just recently, there's a lot of gamers and consumers, and you know, people using it for entertainment that are buying it. Those who want to see Half-Life Alyx in the best possible resolution out there, or those who you know, want to look at those entertainment experiences or play their, you know, even their FPS games and, you know, the best possible resolution. And so a lot of consumers are purchasing the G2 as well as enterprise. Now the HP Reverb G2 Omnicept Edition, yes, that one is specifically targeted and specific at enterprise and developers. Now, if a consumer wants to come on the website and buy it, they sure can, but that's based on we haven't yet announced the price point, but based on the price point and the type of software you'll need to make it be useful, we see it for now being an enterprise and developer target for the Omnicept edition. But the G2 is consumers and businesses.
Right, got it. And we've had a question from Ricky Home. Ricky, I hope you're well. Would love to hear the panel's thoughts on walled gardens within VR. So as an example, the new Quest 2 is arguably the best HMD on the market, in Ricky's opinion. But we've had multiple clients pull out of projects when they realized they had to sign up with Facebook. So what is everyone's perspective on that? Catherine's waving wildly. She's got a view.
I tell you, I get really worked up on the issue of privacy. I again, on the XRE News segment, I covered this actually this coming week. There was a Stanford University study that said that within 5 minutes, under 5 minutes of usage in VR, any VR headset, that they can determine with 95% accuracy who you are. So, I mean, we just heard about the G2 going to have biometrics, et cetera. Well, they all have them. Not only that, it's got inside-out tracking that's mapping your house. Look, privacy in VR is an absolute illusion because your data will be uploaded and sold. I just spoke at a major telecoms conference. I'm very sort of deeply embedded in telecoms and 5G space. This is the rich data. That's why they're providing it to you. And let's face it, that's also why the Facebook headset is heavily discounted. You can get very similar models in China, but they're twice as much even in China. The fact is they're giving it to you for that low price for a reason. And they're hoping to engage you in this ecosystem in which they have invested very heavily. Now, the Sensorium is looking to do the same thing. They want you to be in that walled garden. They want you to be like the iPhone ecosystem where you can only go to iTunes and you only buy things on their store. Why? Because it's the most profitable for them. How do we get out of it? Well, that's a different question. I don't know. It's the short answer. But if you're looking for privacy, I can say right now, you can absolutely forget about it.
Competition.
And that is regardless of headset.
I'll take that question as well. Oh, go ahead, Jeremy. You go first.
I'll just say very quickly, to your last point, Catherine, I think competition is the answer. Somebody's got to come out with a headset in that specific market, standalone headsets, that is maybe priced slightly higher, but with those privacy safeguards put in place, and also that ecosystem around it where developers are willing to build for it. Because in doing the analysis of the market that Oculus Quest is targeting, it was difficult to find equivalent competitors that had all of those different angles covered.
Exactly.
So I think we need to see greater competition.
And they've invested heavily in having this ecosystem that also incentivizes developers to develop for that particular headset. So it's going to be very, very hard for people, given the considerable capital investments required, to be able to deliver this all-in-one headset. And that is, and time is a major issue here. We also seeing them move forward with augmented reality. Who knew that Facebook would be the first mover in AR ahead of Apple? I certainly wasn't expecting that, but yet they're already demoing the AR glasses on campus, whereas iPhone, we've heard leaks, they've got prototype under development, but we don't know when we're going to expect to see it. And by the way, Tilt 5 and many others are going to have several of these things come out early next year. So I think there's going to be a lot of competition for AR. Maybe that's the tipping point, is that we find this mixed media glass that then allows us to escape from this ecosystem. But sooner than that, I'd be very surprised, because Facebook is really, they've dug in their heels with Oculus Quest from the very beginning, and they had the vision.
I think though users have to be, audiences, sorry, not just users, have to be prepared to suspend a level of, forgo a level of privacy to have access to all of the things that they want, right? So, you know, Ingress, as an example, the Niantic game was built to learn how we moved around cities to improve Google Maps data. What is that, an invasion of privacy or not? I don't think so. It's improved the service that I find incredibly useful. So I think there are privacy issues, of course, but these exist in current technologies. I think as soon as you put a camera in your house, though, whether that's inside out tracking or a Nest camera or your
Alexa,
track.
Yeah, I would beg to differ, though, because we can get biometric data that's very rich. It can determine, it can determine many physical attributes, and it can also determine whether or not you are at risk of certain underlying medical conditions. So look, I think that there is a lot more that can that's at risk because, again, I study VR filmmaking. VR is one of the most powerful media that exists on this planet, far more so than a flat screen, because the brain literally cannot. And I encourage you to look at the work of Mel Slater, who's a professor at University of Barcelona. His work with the rubber hand experiment that basically showed that we cannot intellectually distinguish between what we're seeing, what we're experiencing, and our own physical bodies. And therefore, it is a very powerful medium. And if it knows that you are having a bad day, you're having a particularly good day, and can then react by serving you certain ads or experiences to either ramp that experience up or to take advantage of it, to capitalize on it, there is that distinct opportunity. And I will not, and again,
do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? So, do you think that's a good thing? Because Joanna's just said that her new headset has that feature. So presumably, HP's position is that's a good thing.
As an individual, I don't necessarily like it. So,
I'd like to address that because, not every single company is the same company. Not every company has the same values. Not every company has the same business model. So for our company specifically, we've been around 81 years. We've had the trust of our clients for 81 years. We work with governments all around the world. We work in very, very, very secure situations. That's the core business model. Our core business model is selling products to people that are going to be secure. And so that's what we start when we started working on this headset a few years ago. That's been at this from the very beginning. We've been working with Jeremy Bailenson, who's one of the leading experts on ethics and privacy and responsibility. And so he's been an integral part of the team since the very beginning. And so I think, I don't think we can group all of this in one bucket. And I think it's important to see, what is the actual product? Who is, are you the product in the case? Or are you not the product? Is the, what types of privacy and regulations, and what are the different companies following? And so for us, this is, critical, and this is crucial. And so I think, there's lots of big questions out there still remain to be answered, but I, would also look at companies' track records and look at how they're dealing with information today, and how, who are their clients today, and how businesses are working with them today. And then, where are they taking this to the future?
Joanna, I absolutely agree. And I would also suggest that, Facebook, again, I went back to its literature regarding privacy, and it said that we're not, selling this today, which led one to, believe that they wouldn't exclude it tomorrow, because the language was very specific. And that's it. They envision it as a social network of the future, and looking at how they've conducted their business until now, where ad revenues are a significant portion of their business model and their profitability. That's them. So I think that's very much unique to them, but we can't discount the fact that this is a main feature, which is going to be viewed as a benefit for many advertisers or marketers across any headset.
It depends on what you do with the data, right? So if the data goes back, like in the case I was giving, if the data is going back to improve upon your learning experience, and then
absolutely
stops there, then
absolutely
that's a different scenario.
I agree.
Little did Ricky know he would kick off such a heated debate, but thank you for the question, Ricky. But it's been a great, really fascinating, lively panel. Thank you all for contributing. I'm looking forward to seeing you hopefully in person in 2021. Jeremy has a book out, Reality Check, coming in 2021 in January. So anyone who's on the attendees, please look out for that. And if you haven't had a chance to, check out Blend Market, because we're trying to fragment the ecosystem and make it easier for everyone to create immersive projects. So have a good evening for those over this part of the world. Have a good day for those over in Joanna and Catherine's part of the world. And thanks for joining.
Happy Thanksgiving to everyone in Catherine and my part of the world.
Yes.
Enjoy your holiday, hopefully with a very small group of people, and stay safe.
Stay well, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.
Bye.